Well, that was actually going to be my point on Kaepernick. Kaepernick could develop into a very, very good NFL quarterback. It's like you said, he's got all the tools in the world, but he is extremely raw, and he's going to take 2 or 3 years to develop. And the problem is, if you're taking this guy at the middle or end of the first round, even the second round in this year's draft, because you need a quarterback, what happens when he doesn't play and you find yourself picking in the top 5 next year, or even first overall? I mean, is it going to be a situation like we might see next week with the Panthers, with, they drafted Clausen, and now they're saying, we have to draft a quarterback because we're picking first overall, because we're not sure if he's the answer, because we don't want to wait for him. It would be the same scenario. I mean, that's something you have to think about.
Absolutely, and I'll go out on a limb last year for next year and saying, we told everybody last year that Jake Locker was not going to be the best quarterback in this class. We are telling everybody, and I think we're in agreement, that Andrew Luck is going to be the best player in the 2012 draft, hands down, pretty much regardless of what he does this season. And if you're first overall next year, you do not want to pass on a franchise quarterback, because the worst thing you could do is pass on the next Peyton Manning, and he goes number 2, and everyone says, hey, look what you did there. What happened? And a guy like Kaepernick took a leap forward this year statistically, but he didn't dominate. I mean, he had good numbers, but he wasn't, he still threw 8 interceptions, for Nevada, and it's not like Nevada's schedule was all that daunting. The best game they played was probably against Boise State, but and that was he played very average in that game. So
he's
I
a
don't
developmental
like
prospect.
He is.
To be fair,
again,
he's a developmental prospect.
That is fair, but you don't take that in the first round. You don't take a guy that you have no idea what you're going to get with, because I don't think. And if anyone should be fired if they work in the NFL, if they're going to tell me that Colin Kaepernick's going to be ready in even a year from now to play in the NFL, because he is so far away. I don't know. I just don't know what. I don't like Kaepernick myself. I wouldn't draft him in the first 3 rounds, but I know there's people that would draft him he might go in the first round.
I like Kaepernick. I just don't like drafting quarterbacks in the second or third round. But you're right, and I don't think anybody would say, he's going to be ready within, a couple months or a year of being drafted. It's going to take him some time. We already touched on Cam Newton a little bit. It's going to take him a lot of time because he ran a very simple offense at Auburn. I mean, basically everything was just one read, and if it wasn't there, he'd take off and run, because we all know he can. He's a phenomenal athlete. But another guy that we haven't really talked too much about is Blaine Gabbert, and he's not as raw as those guys, but compared to some of the other quarterback prospects in years past, he's still not that close to being, ready to step in and start an NFL game. Do you agree on that?
Yeah, 100%. Missouri runs a spread offense. It allows for a lot of, open reads for him, easy reads, and it's not a pro-style offense. And, I'm probably Blaine Gabbert's biggest critic. I might be his biggest critic out there. He took a jump in being able, his completion percentage this year. But again, completing 60% of your passes in a spread offense isn't anything to, brag about. But his touchdown interception ratio was terrible. He had 16 touchdowns and 9 picks this past year. That's not awful, god awful, but that's not good for a top 10 pick. And he only, in his yards per attempt was only 6.7 this year, which is like, it's not good enough for what you're looking for when you're talking about top flight quarterback prospect. Now, granted, his level of competition was better than, say, Colin Kaepernick, but I am not a big believer in Blaine Gabbert. I agree that he's probably the best quarterback in this class, but I think this is a weak quarterback class. Even if we're going to see 5 quarterbacks go in the first, 40 picks, I still think that, he is not, if this was last year, there's no way he goes before Sam Bradford. No way.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. The comparison I make with Gabbert is Jason Campbell. And it goes back to what I said before. Jason Campbell is not a bust. Jason Campbell's a starting quarterback in the NFL. But he can't, he's got a strong arm, but he has trouble completing intermediate and long throws. He's not very accurate down the field. Blaine Gabbert has the same problem. And it's like we were saying with Locker, accuracy isn't typically something that improves. If a guy isn't an accurate passer in college, he's not typically going to step into the pros and all of a sudden, start completing 60-65% of his passes. Now, a guy like Campbell does. He completes about 60% of his passes, and I can see Gabbert doing that too. But they're both held back by the fact that they're not accurate down the field. And if you're ever going to get into that elite quarterback mix, a top 10 in the league, like we keep bringing up, you have to be able to do that. Otherwise, you just have a guy that's a mediocre quarterback and a mediocre starting quarterback. I'll give you that,
right,
in the NFL, but it's not good enough at the end of the day. You look at the last few quarterbacks that won Super Bowls. You have Aaron Rodgers, you have Breeze, Roethlisberger, Brady. You need a top 10 quarterback to win in the league, and if you don't have that, you're going to have to upgrade. So you can't take a guy in the top 10 if you aren't convinced that he's going to be that guy for you. I don't care how badly you need a quarterback. If he's not the guy, you can't take him.
And I'm just going to emphasize. I just want to emphasize one thing that you said. We'll hear from time to time when people will say, Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl, but Trent Dilfer played for one of the best defenses in NFL history, and Trent Dilfer was just asked not to make mistakes. That is a very, very rare case where you see not an elite quarterback winning, a starting quarterback winning a Super Bowl. So, if you're going to give that, if you're thinking that, hey, I could win with an average quarterback, I'll take my money on one of those top 10 guys every day of the week.
It's one of the dumbest things that you hear. You'll hear, fans and people talk and say, you don't need an elite quarterback. You need to build a great defense. You need to build a great defense of 15 guys instead of getting the right quarterback. It doesn't make any sense. But moving on, what do you think about Ryan Mallett? This is a guy that, you look at his success in the SEC. This guy lights out. I mean, for the most part, he was a little shaky when he was under pressure, and in big situations, he threw a costly pick against Alabama earlier this year, and then obviously against Ohio State at the end of the year. But what are your opinions on Mallett? If you just are looking at the box scores, Mallett's gonna make you salivate. With what Ryan Mallett does on the field, on a week in and week out basis, he is the most complete quarterback in terms of arm strength and accuracy that there is in this draft. Unfortunately, Mallett has two huge things going against him. One, just being the obvious of what you just talked about. It seems as in a lot of times when these big games would come up, particularly in the Sugar Bowl, Mallett made a huge mistake. Really, you don't want to say he cost his team the game, but he really hurt their chances of winning, particularly at the end. Right. He's a little slow of foot in the pocket, but I'm not going to kill him on that. But it's the off the field stuff too. That the drug use that he's admitted to, and when you're investing money and you want to put your franchise, a multi $100 million
team on someone's shoulders. Do you want it to be on this kid who really hasn't grown up, and I don't know if he ever will?